What's up, vapors? Thanks for checking out Daily Vape TV. My name is Nick, and it's Fresh Build Friday. That's right, it's that time of the week again where we get you ready for the weekend with a brand new coil build. Alright guys, so this is another request from you guys out there, and I actually wanted to do this coil even before anyone even mentioned it in the comments, but since you guys requested it, I decided to give it a go today. This is going to be a coil that goes directly through the middle of a two-post atomizer such as this Velocity V2. So, without further ado, let's go right into it. Let's grab our mod, our wick, our addy, our juice, our wire, our tools, all that good stuff. Let's go down to the close-up view and build it up. Alright guys, so today we are going to do a standard fuse Clapton, but I feel like we should do this with a little bit of 28 gauge. I've got this Kidney Puncher 28 gauge, Nichrome 80, and some Lightning Vapes 38 gauge. So that is the wire types that we're going to be using today. Of course, if you want to do this for yourself, feel free to use whatever you want. Honestly, that is the best part. That's freedom of building. You can build whatever you want using whatever wire type you want. So with that, that is what I will be using today. But let's go ahead and bring in our drill and our jig here. Position it right about there, I think. And the first thing we're going to do is just take some of this Nichrome 80 wire, and we need about probably a good 2 feet of it. So we're going to spool it out. And yeah, we'll just do the whole rest of the spool there. There's about 2.5 feet maybe left of this stuff here, so we're just going to use the whole rest of the spool. And we're just going to lock in one side here into our drill. Gonna grab our pliers and we're gonna straighten this stuff out. So spin it up for about, I would say, a good 10 seconds or so. Alright, so now that our wire is good and straight, next thing we're gonna do is just find the end of our spinner here and slide this wire through it. Alright, so we got it going through the end of our spinner, and we're gonna place it back in the chuck of our drill. I'm actually going to clip a little bit of this stuff off here. There we go. So this is still a little bit springy since it's 28 gauge. 28 gauge for me is pretty darn springy. So what I like to do, take it out of the chuck of the drill, organize my leads a little bit. Usually what I'll do is have them facing 2 different directions, so that way it has a really good grip inside the chuck of the drill. Just going to open that wide open. Slide our core wires in there, and there we go. Tighten that down really good and tight. Now we have to stretch this out a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is actually take the slack out of this wire and create our pinched end on the other side here. So just like that. Take our pliers on this side here and give it a little pinch. That feels pretty good. Now we have no slack in our wire, just like that, which is perfect. Next step is Claptoning. So by request from you guys, I'm not going to slow this part down, and I'm going to kind of give you guys some tips along the way here. So I've got this 38 gauge Nichrome, and I'm just going to get my spool ready to go here. Got to find the right piece. There we go. This stuff is very, very thin. So if you're not used to using this thin of a gauge wire for your outer wire, stick with something that's going to be pretty comfortable for you. Like 36 tends to be my go-to, but you can even do this with 34 or whatever you want to use. I don't know, I felt a little bit froggy today, so I feel like doing a little bit of 38 gauge. So as you saw there, I just can slide that right into the chuck of the drill, and now I'm just kind of wrapping around the little nub end of that 90-degree bend that we put in our chuck of our drill. So with that, it makes for a good kind of tension surface right there. So now I can just start spinning this thing up, and I don't have to worry about it loosening up inside the chuck of the drill. So next step is just getting this wire started here. I like to do a few quick little wraps around, just spin up the drill a few times like that, just to get some tension going on in there. And yeah, we're going to make our way down this strand here, and I'll do this in regular motion so you guys can see how long this process takes. And if you make a mistake like this, do not worry about it. Just try to catch it as quickly as you can and back off your drill right to the problem spot, just like that. And then what I tend to do is just take my thumb and forefinger, just kind of run it up and down that piece of wire until you get all the little kinks out from where it was clapped in on there. Then you start off fairly close to that wire, that piece of wire again. Just start off slow and try to get those all lined up once again, and you'll be good to go. All right, so now that we have our whole piece of wire here clapped in, you just want to pinch it back onto the spool like that and then trim it. So you just cut it off like that. And there we go. We have a nice about foot long section of fused Clapton wire. So the next thing I normally do is start to get out any twists in the wire by holding onto it on this side with my pliers, setting the drill backwards, and then spinning it up a few times here. Now, it doesn't have to be 100% perfect the second you take it out of the chuck of the drill. Obviously, when you're wrapping your coils, you might have to do, undo one or two twists here and there, which is definitely no big deal. But we have plenty of wire to work with, so let's go ahead and start building a coil. So I think we have enough room in our build deck to fit a 3mm coil between the two posts, so that's what I'm going to go for today's build. But if we need to do a smaller coil, I think I have plenty of wire for this one here. So first thing I'm going to do is put it in the little hole in our coil jig here, and we're going to start our coil. I feel like today we're going to do about, I think 8 wraps would be appropriate. So that's 1, 2, 3, and you got to make sure that your leads are facing opposite directions. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we want 8 on top, so I have to do an extra half a wrap here. And that should be good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here is our 8 wrap coil that we're going to be using today. And yeah, let's just go for it. So I think what I'm going to do first and foremost is trim some of this excess wire off here. We have way too much to work with, so just like that. And I did put a lot of tension on this thing, but it's still pretty darn springy, so I got to make sure these wraps are facing the opposite direction and not the same direction. That's the problem with this stuff here, is it's very, very, very springy, so make sure your leads are facing the right direction first and foremost here. Just like that. Once it gets some heat to it, it'll definitely tighten up a little bit, but I'm going to try to work out anything before we install it, so just like that. There we go. That looks pretty good to me. So this is going to be an interesting one today. Let's see, how should we go about doing this? Both wraps are kind of on the bottom, so I feel like it would be appropriate to kind of just slide that one end like that, and then bend that part over the top. It's a little bit tight, but I think we can manage it. I think we can do it. So let's see. And obviously this is kind of an experiment for me, just like everything else. So we're going to hold our jig like that in place while we tighten this terminal down. Just like that. It's good and tight. I know you guys can't see it, but I swear it's happening. So now I can kind of relax a little bit since this one's all in there. And the next thing I'm going to do is kind of put the jig in from the other side, get my pliers out, and we did something very similar on the Wraith. Remember that? That was a while ago. So we're just going to kind of neaten this thing up a little bit. I think what I'm going to do actually is just kind of give it a bend with the pliers. That might just do it. So just kind of pre-bend that wire around a little bit so it knows where to go. And then put it through like that. In the bottom terminal, we're using the same level terminal, I guess you could say, for each of these posts here, because I want both of the leads are coming out of the bottom, so I want that coil to sit a little bit lower in the deck. So I feel like that should be good right about there. And we're just gonna tighten down, get rid of any slack in that wire, and do a, bend this wire around the back there, which should hold it in place fairly nicely, and tighten it down. Honestly, I gotta tell you, this is going a little bit more smoothly than I thought it would. Honestly, I thought I was gonna have to struggle with this one a lot more, but I might have spoken too soon. I probably should shut up now, because I'm still not done with it yet, but so far, so good. Everything is tight in there now. And obviously that coil wants to move around, so we're going to have to wrestle with it a little bit here in order to get that positioning just right. So, really wants to move, but let's snip off our excess wire. So just kind of right there at the edge of the post. Same thing on this side. And let's just take a look around. I'm actually going to tighten these top screws in a little bit because the cap fits better on there when the top screws are tightened in. And we're going to set our wattage because we're going to start dry firing this thing. Looking at it now, it looks pretty good to me. You can see right through there, which is like the main goal of this whole coil here, so that's good. Let's set our wattage at about 30 watts. I want to start this thing really, really low. Alright, so my mod is set at 30 watts. We're going to start just kind of pulsing it just to give it a little bit of color and working out any hot spots that might be happening right now. Just slow pulses. Making sure nothing shorts out either, so make sure that coil's going to want to move in the middle there. So what you want to do, just keep an eye on it and making sure it's not touching either one of these posts, which is probably more difficult than it sounds here. So what we might have to do actually is hang on to this post, because this atomizer wants to come off. So what I'm going to try to do here is hang on to this post as I maneuver that coil around in there a little bit. And I feel like every time we fire this thing, it's going to want to move, so let's just keep an eye on it. It's looking pretty good though. It's heating up nice and evenly. It's got a little bit of color to it right now, which is good. It's exactly what I expect out of nichrome. Just going to work out a few minor little hot spots. And we should be good to go for a slightly higher wattage. Can tell you right now, we are not going to hit the 100-watt mark today. I can guarantee you that, because this coil is actually a little bit higher resistance than I was expecting. So might be good for anyone that doesn't want to, you know, do some crazy watts, but yep, just like that. Just kind of keep tweaking it until, there you go, it starts glowing from the inside out. That's exactly what I wanted. All right, we're going to let this coil cool down for a second, and then we'll hit it with a little bit more wattage. All right, so I brought my mod up to 50 watts. Let's see how fast this thing can fire up. Ooh. And it looks like got a few more slight kinks to work out. Not a big deal. Wow, this thing lights up quick. So one thing I always do before I, you know, say it's done is I double check my screws. Because sometimes when you're heating up the coils, or coil in this case, it can move around on you, you know, loosen up those screws a little bit. Wow, all right, so the ramp up time on this thing is pretty darn quick, and this one's only set at 50 watts right now, so that's pretty cool. I'm excited about this one. Yeah, let's go ahead and wick it. Alright guys, so here it is, all ready to go. Let's go ahead and test this thing out at 50 watts. You know, not bad for a single coil. I'm going to say that's not bad. I can't wait to see how this thing vapes though. Let's go back to the main screen, have a quick vape on it, and we'll talk about it some more. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the build. Now let's talk about the coil that we just put in this thing. So first and foremost, it came out to 0.73 ohms after I've been firing it. I'm vaping it at 65 watts at 6.89 volts. And yeah, it came out a little bit higher than I expected. I was kind of expecting a little bit lower than that, probably more towards the pre-fire resistance, which is about 0.5. But honestly, I've been digging it so far. You know, 6.89 volts is way up there. But as far as the heat is concerned, which is our first category, it's not that bad. It's a nice kind of warmish vape. It's not hot whatsoever. It's not cool whatsoever. It's just kind of nice in that middle range there for a single coil. It's totally acceptable for me. And it's a good spring kind of vape. You know, it's just getting warm here in Massachusetts. And this vape definitely kind of reminds me of that. It's kind of like right in the middle. It's not quite hot. It's not quite cool. But it's going to be great for flavor, which we'll get into in a little bit here. But moving on to our second category, which is the ramp up and ramp down time. Honestly, the ramp up time is next to nothing, about maybe half a second before you get that real full kind of draw going on with this one here. I have the airflow restricted almost down to nothing. It's a very fine sliver here at the bottom. I have the upper airflow holes on the Velocity V2 closed, and with that, I think the heat is really well contained, but you know, the ramp up time is very minimal. The ramp down time, very minimal as well. So let's go ahead and have a drag off this thing and we'll check it out. So the thing I noticed about the ramp down time when I put it up to my ear is that it did have quite a bit of sizzle the second I put it up to my ear, but it almost instantly went down to almost nothing. So with that, the ramp down time is very quick. I'm going to say under 2 seconds for a full ramp down to nothing. So that is perfectly acceptable for me. You know, I expected this to kind of ramp down a lot slower, considering the fact that no air holes are directed right at the coil. The airflow is just kind of moving around the wick and then up and through the top cap section here, the drip tip. So with that, it's kind of a curious little coil here, but definitely liking it so far. I've got to say, I'm really digging it. So for our third category, which is the difficulty of this build, honestly, it's a fused Clapton. It's nothing new, but I like to challenge myself a little bit with using the smaller gauges, especially when it comes to these kind of smaller fused Claptons. And with that adds a little bit of extra kind of, you know, an added layer of difficulty to the build, but without making it too crazy, you know, like a frame stapled fused Clapton or something like that. I don't know, one of those crazier, fancier, artsier kind of builds. But, you know, fused Claptons are a staple in our industry right now, and I think everyone should learn them. I've said this time and time again. It's my favorite coil personally, and you know, it's just something to kind of flex your building muscles with. And for my final category, which is the flavor on this build, I am getting exceptional flavor out of this one. I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's the 38 gauge or the fact that I used all nichrome wire, but I am getting great flavor off of this one right here. I'm vaping some Great Falls Vapor Strawberry Dream, and it is fantastic. It's a nice, bright, kind of ripe strawberry flavor. To me, it reminds me about, you know, half strawberry jam and half of like a candy strawberry. It's somewhere right in the middle of those two kind of flavor profiles. But yeah, really, really good flavor on this one. I definitely think it has something to do with the heat. It's kind of that mild temperature, which really isn't killing off any of the notes of this particular flavor. But I would say this is probably good for the more delicate flavors out there. So if you guys like a lot of flavor and you want something that you can vape those kind of lighter notes, you know, those juices that have those little light notes of flavor to them, this is definitely worth a shot. So that about does it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this. You can also hit that notification bell right next to the subscribe button if you want to be alerted whenever I upload videos. Also, leave me some comments in the box below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think of this build, whether or not you want to try it for yourself, or if you have a suggestion for a future episode of Fresh Build Friday, leave it down there for me to check out. Also, check out the description below where I've got the advocacy and my social media links. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, and as always, vape on!